The Harley Davidson Street Bob is a fantastic bike, but I've actually got 5 reasons why you might actually want to stay away from this motorcycle. Alright everybody, what is up? What is up? As always, thanks for stopping by to another video today. We are here with my 2022 Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob. And if you guys have been tuning in for a while, you guys know I have nothing but great things to say about this motorcycle. It's one of my favorite bikes that I've ever ridden. It accomplishes everything that I need, everything that I want to do with my bike. I have nothing but good things to say about it all the time. But today, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, play a little bit of devil's advocate here, and give you 5 reasons why, if you're actually in the market for a motorcycle, why you might actually want to stay away from this bike. Of course, every bike has its pros, its cons. You have to weigh what you want your bike to do specifically for you, take the best route for you. That's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're picking out a new motorcycle. So I'm going to give you guys 5 reasons or 5 things to consider that might actually deter you from getting the Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob. So of course, before we get started, if you have a Street Bob or if you've ever ridden one, let me know some of your cons about this bike. Let me know some of the things that you have noticed, things that you would consider that might deter you from actually getting this motorcycle. I'll be curious to see what you guys have to say and how they align with some of my experiences so far. So make sure you drop any of your reasons not to get this bike down in the comments. And of course, as I go through these, keep in mind, I'm approaching this from the stock bike setup. Of course, a lot of these can be changed and modified to your preferences. A lot of this will be in reference to the way the bike comes stock from the factory. So let's go ahead and get it started. These are in no particular order, starting off with the number 1 reason why you might want to stay away from the Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob is right here. That would be the gas tank. As many of you probably know, this bike comes with a 3.5 gallon gas tank. So if you are a rider that likes to get about 200 plus miles of range out of your tank or without stopping for gas, you're going to want to stay away from this bike because, like I mentioned, 3.5 gallons of gas here. My experience with the range on a tank is about 160, maybe push it to 170 miles per tank, and that's at some very basic highway cruising. So if I'm around town, stoplight to stoplight, intersection, stop and go, all that stuff, it's even lower. Sometimes that can dip down to around 120. So that's one of the things to take into consideration with this bike. Your range is barely going to reach 200 miles on a tank. If you're someone that likes to get those longer stretches without stopping, you might want to stay away from this because you've only got 3.5 gallons of gas. You're probably not going to reach that range of 200 miles on a tank. So next up, reason number 2 why you might want to stay away from this bike is if you are someone who needs a lot of technology and features with your bike. So obviously the essence of the Street Bob is a simple, minimalistic, stripped down cruiser. There's not a lot of features, not a lot of technology. That comes by way of this very minimalist gauge here. The gauge is going to give you everything you need from speed, RPMs, fuel, to your tripometers, all those things. But it really just doesn't have all of that technology that is packed into some of your different bikes. Also, when you think about features that might go along with that, if you think about things like ABS, that's optional. Your bike may or may not come with it. You have to pay more for it. Cruise control does not come standard with that either. That is something that you would have to add yourself after you have already purchased their bike. So let's go ahead real quick and look at the simplicity of this gauge here as we turn the bike on. That's going to give you a look. That's all you're working with here. Not a lot of technology built into that. Of course, we can cycle through. You've got a little bit of your bike data with some of your fuel, your tripometer, your range, and different things like that. But again, if technology and features is something that you're looking for in there, you might want to stay away from the Street Bob. You're just not going to have it unless you add it aftermarket. So reason number 3 why you might want to stay away from this motorcycle is if you are someone who is super focused on performance and performance features. Now, why do I say that about this motorcycle? It does anything you want it to do, but it comes with the 114 Milwaukee 8 in Harley's lineup. Now, super great engine, performs amazing. I absolutely love the engine, but there are bigger options on other bikes that you could go with. Some other things to consider is the front end. This has your traditional front suspension. It does not have the inverted suspension. and you do not have the dual disc brakes up front. So if you are someone that is really focused on some of those performance features, you're probably going to want to gravitate towards something like a Lowrider S with a 117 engine in it. You've got your inverted front suspension, you've got your dual disc brakes, you also have additional travel in the rear. This bike just does not have those features stock from the factory. And again, is that something you can do yourself aftermarket? Yes. But if you're someone who's looking for that level of extra performance, you're probably going to gravitate towards one of those bikes like a Lowrider S, Lowrider ST, or you're probably even going to move yourself up into those bagger options because again, the essence of this bobber, your traditional stripped down bobber cruiser bike, you've got the 114, your traditional front end setup with a single disc, and then your traditional monoshock of the soft tail in the rear suspension. And so next up, that will lead me into reason number 4 why you might want to stay away from the Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob. And I will tread lightly with this one. I would say if you are a larger or bigger rider, you might want to consider staying away from this motorcycle. And why is that? One of the things that you will hear oftentimes about this bike and any bike with mid controls, as you can see here with the placement of these foot pegs, is if you're a bigger or larger rider, you might just be cramped with this stock setup. One thing that you hear traditionally about a lot of the Softails in general, the Standard, the Street Bob, the Lowrider S, the placement of these foot pegs tends to be a little bit high, and that will oftentimes push your knee up higher and cramp your knee to your hip area. Now, of course, that could be alleviated with forward controls, pushing these out a little bit farther, giving yourself a little bit more room to reach out. But with that stock setup, that's something you're going to want to consider is the placement of these mid controls. I've heard a lot of larger, taller riders say that they've been very cramped with this stock setup. Now me, I'm a little bit shorter, coming in at about 5'6". This is pretty much no problem with me as a shorter rider. I've had no problem with the placement of the foot pegs. I have changed out the seat to slide myself back, lift myself up just a little bit farther. But definitely one thing to consider if you are a bigger, taller, larger rider, the placement of these foot controls has given people problems from what I have heard. Another thing to consider about the size of the bike as well, of course it is a Harley cruiser bike around 640 pounds. It does have a very slim profile from front to back. So again, if you're a bigger, larger rider, I'm not sure how you're concerned about the aesthetics of how you look while you're riding, traveling, things like that. You might look a little awkward if you are a bigger, taller, larger rider on this motorcycle because it does have such a slim profile. Just one thing to consider and one of the reasons why you might consider staying away from this motorcycle. Alrighty guys, so let's go ahead and finish it off with reason number 5 why I would say you might consider staying away from this motorcycle. And that is if you are a brand new motorcycle rider. If you are very brand new, very fresh to riding, I would not recommend this bike to a brand new rider. I do have a full video on the details of that back in my videos if you want to see that in a little bit more depth. But just to recap that, this is somewhat of a bigger bike at 640 pounds. You've got a very large 1850cc engine between your legs there. So I would say if you're totally new, totally fresh, not much experience under your belt, I would say stay away from this bike. I would say go ahead and get all that good experience learning on a lighter weight bike, a little bit less power, learn the maneuverability, learn the throttle control, build up those skills to then move up into a little bit of a bigger, heavier, more expensive style bike where you can make that investment to a big, powerful bike that you're going to keep for a long period of time. Now, I know people are going to say they hopped right on this thing as a beginner, had no problems. You can do it, but I just wouldn't recommend it right off the bat. If you've got like a month or two of experience, I could see people jumping right into this thing, but I would say for my recommendation, totally green, totally brand new rider, I wouldn't recommend this bike for that population. Probably going to want to stay away from that. Alrighty guys, so that is going to start to wrap it up for today. Again, that was my 5 reasons why you might want to consider staying away from this motorcycle. Again, to recap, those would be the size of the gas tank, the technology and features, the performance, the size of you as a rider, and then of course, if you are a beginner rider, all those reasons I would take into consideration to maybe staying away from this bike. Now again, that was just me playing a little bit of devil's advocate. I absolutely love the bike. It has done everything I have needed it to from a size, performance, reliability perspective, but that's just me. always take into consideration your personal needs and preferences when you are picking out your bikes. And be sure to drop down in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of those reasons why I think you should stay away from the bike. Feel free to let me know. And then of course let me know your personal experiences why you might recommend this bike for or not for someone in the market for a bike. So of course that'll go ahead and wrap it up for now. If you guys like anything we have going on here, make sure you go ahead and like this video and of course subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with everything we have going on here in the city of Philadelphia. But as always, make it a good one, guys. Ride safe out there. It's the Moto Jawn. We'll see you all down there.